weekly program about important issues and events in the two Virginias.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this edition of In Focus. This morning, we're featuring something you don't see every day. Honors for a Revolutionary War soldier. His name was Richard Bailey, and he's been gone since the early 1800s. But some local American Legion, Mercer County Post 54 members, and Mercer County Veterans Honor Guard, and even some of Bailey's descendants met at his grave recently to honor him. Also, some members of the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution as well. It was a beautiful ceremony in Bluefield, Virginia at the end of last month. And in fact, here's some video from that ceremony in late October. And we'll be playing this for segment 2 for you to hear some of the audio. But Bailey is buried in a private cemetery along with some of his other relatives right outside Leatherwood Farms in Bluefield, Virginia. Joining me now in the studio to share more information are Jim Worsham, the chaplain for American Legion Mercer County Post 54, located in Princeton. Also joining us are Dave Bailey, sitting right next to me, commander of the American Legion Post 54 in Princeton, and also a descendant of Bailey. And Kevin Pruitt on the end joins us. He's also a descendant and the president of the local Sons of American Revolution chapter. Thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for joining us today.
Welcome.
Pleasure to have you here. So Jim, I'll start with you. You have a background in history, so share with us, how did you find out about Richard Bailey, this Revolutionary War soldier buried in Bluefield, Virginia?
Well, it was quite by accident. I moved to Bluefield in 1980, and I was exploring the area, and I saw that little small private cemetery, and I went over and looked, and I was surprised. There was Richard Bailey, Virginia Militia, Revolutionary War, and there it was.
Wow, fantastic. So, Dave, how did you find out that you're actually related to Bailey, and how are you related to him?
All the Baileys are related. All of us. We're all cousins right here, except for Jim. He's an outsider. But my family came out of Beartown, and that was a lot of his descendants, Richard Bailey's descendants, went into Beartown.
Now, where's Beartown? I'm not familiar with that.
That's over in McDowell, well, edge of McDowell, Mercer County. And Andrew Jackson Bailey was at the turn of the century. In the 1900s, he was sheriff in Wyoming County. He also became a superintendent of schools. He couldn't read, write, or do arithmetic. He learned it on his own.
Wow.
And he was one of the direct descendants from Richard Bailey.
Incredible. And also, Kevin, you're related directly to Richard Bailey, so how are you related to him?
He's my 6th great-grandfather.
So how did you find that out?
Doing my genealogy to get into the Sons of the American Revolution. You've got to have documented proof for every generation. And it gets kind of hard to get when you get back to the 18th century.
Oh, I'm sure it does. Jim, how did you find out about the descendants of Richard Bailey then?
Well, it was quite by accident also. Dave here went to a family reunion and mentioned about the grave and found out Kevin here. And so that worked out well.
What does it mean for you all to honor Richard Bailey in this way?
What does it mean to me? If you stop and think about the Revolution, that these soldiers, these patriot soldiers, they were amateurs and they were facing professionals. And that to me is just awesome what they did face, from the line of fire out there and them all firing at once. And they were willing to stand out there and do it. If you've seen the movie The Patriot, that gives you some idea of what life is like for these people.
So based on everyone's research, what can you tell us about Richard Bailey? I guess, Kevin, I'll talk to you because I was talking with you at the cemetery that
Well, he was born around 1735 in Wigham, Lancashire, England. And then he came over around 1756, 1759. He was in Chesterfield County, Virginia. And then he moved into this part of the... Rumor has it he knew Daniel Boone, and they talked about this part of the world because this was the frontier then.
Yeah.
And around 1777, he moved into Bluefield, what is Bluefield, Virginia now. And John Goulding Davidson was already here, and together they built the fort, which was known as the Bailey-Davidson Fort, behind Westgate Shopping Center.
Right, and the Bailey family is buried at this private cemetery outside Leatherwood Farms. What do we know about some of the other relatives of Richard Bailey?
Well, his wife was Ann Belcher, who was Phoebe Belcher's sister, who was married to Mitchell Clay, who was another of the first settlers into the county at Lake Shawnee. Some more of them in there are children. Then he's got children buried over where Whitethorn Elementary used to be. His son John, my fifth great-grandfather. There's several of them over in Walnut Grove, which is off of Jefferson Street. It's a beautiful cemetery over there that you don't even know it's there unless you're looking for it.
And Jim, can you share more with us on how you go about researching someone like Richard Bailey, who's been gone since the early 1800s, but how does one go about finding out about his history?
It's not easy. It's not easy. You gather all the information you can, and of course, if you've got some more specific information, like with the Sons of the American Revolution, you can link in through that. But it's basically a genealogical challenge.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can find things on microfilm, and it's just amazing what is there.
And a lot of times, like, oral history is passed down from generation to generation. Would that be true in this case for you all with your family history then?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
A lot of it's, you know, like one of my granddaddy's brother, Amos Bailey. He'll tell you little things that my granddaddy did. And you'll sit back and you'll say, okay, is this true or not?
Yeah.
And then you start asking people around, and yeah, a lot of it is true. And some of it is horse manure.
Right. I guess you have to filter through what's true and, like, as you said, what's horse manure, what isn't true. And then can you all share some more about how the American Legion goes about honoring folks like Richard Bailey and also the Sons of the American Revolution? So let's start with the American Legion, and then we'll talk about Sons of the American Revolution.
We do the Mercer County Veterans Honor Guard and the American Legion Post 54. We do an average of 120 funerals for fallen veterans.
Wow.
We cover 9 counties, 3 of them in Virginia, and we've been asked to go as far as Florida to do the service. And we're known all over the East Coast. I mean, we do flag ceremonies, we do anything that's patriotic.
Well, thank you for what you do as well. And also, let's talk about the Sons of the American Revolution and how they do ceremonies like this and honor folks.
Well, this was a memorial, but we also do dedications where we will put a marker in. And there's 3 that I know of in Mercer County, 3 Patriot graves. They don't have markers yet, but we're getting to it. And in the State Society, we do, wherever we can, a Patriot marker. It's a nice stone marker.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, we have much more to talk about, and I do have sights and sounds from the day in late October when the memorial happened. So we'll have that right after this.
First, we learned of the actual grave of a Revolutionary War soldier, and then we discovered that a direct descendant of this man lived locally. Then this event was planned. The veteran we're honoring today is Richard Bailey, who served in the Virginia militia during the Revolutionary War. This is his grave. And a group of veterans, the Sons of the American Revolution, joined together to honor one of our country's first veterans. Today, we're doing just that. Post 54, Mercer County Veterans Honor Guard will fire 2 volleys over Richard Bailey's grave, such as Richard himself actually used. The 3 volleys fired represent duty, honor, and country. And then, in honor of all veterans, we're going to play taps. After the firing ceremony, I'm going to give you a couple of insights about the impact of veterans like Richard Bailey. Commander Bailey, take over your detachment.
Sir. Revolutionary Army. Ready. Hey. Give fire. Cover. On. Honor guard. Shoot. Forward. Ready. Hey. Fire. Hey. Fire. Crazy. Out. Ready. Hey. Give fire. Cover. On. Honor guard. Shoot. Forward. Ready. Hey. Fire. Hey. Fire.
Over 250,000 American men served in the armed forces that won our independence. Between 80 and 90,000 of them served in the Continental Army, an all-volunteer army of citizens. All these men risked their lives. About 7,000 died in battle. At least 17,000 soldiers died of disease or in accidents. As many as 25,000 men were disabled by disease, wounds, or injuries that sustained in service. Those who survived the war became America's first veterans, the first veterans of an army of free men. The American Republic owes its existence to these men. Thank you all for coming. God bless you all, and God bless America.
Oh, that gives me chills. Wow. That you just saw the ceremony honoring Revolutionary War soldier, or a memorial, I should say, honoring Revolutionary War soldier Richard Bailey. So joining me once again, Jim Worsham and Dave Bailey will be back for our next segment. Kevin Pruitt joins us, and joining us now is Greg Morgan, also a descendant of Mr. Bailey and a member of the Sons of the American Revolution chapter here in Mercer County. But Jim, I'll start with you. Why was it important to honor this soldier who's been gone for more than 200 years in such a way?
Just think, that was one of the very first American veterans. We're talking about Veterans Day coming up soon, and this is going back to where it all began. If they had failed and they'd lost the revolution, we would not be an independent country today.
Absolutely.
We owe them so much. And thinking about what these guys did, these amateurs fighting these professional, disciplined soldiers of the British Army. That was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Greg, what are your thoughts on honoring Richard Bailey in this way?
I think it's important that we honor all of our veterans. I mean, we know that freedom isn't free. And these veterans that we honor, many of them have given their lives, and then others that didn't suffered hardship throughout their service. So I think it's very important that we continue to honor all of our veterans.
Absolutely. And Kevin, what are your thoughts? You were standing right next to Mr. Bailey's grave, and we had a conversation about what you would say to him if he was here today. And I'll ask you that again in a minute. But what are your thoughts on honoring him?
That's what the SAR is. You know, we honor our ancestors, and we are living historians. And trying to preserve their memory and promote it on to posterity as accurately as we can.
And if Mr. Bailey was here today, what would you say to him?
Well, I would like to know how he actually got into this valley. Did he come over the mountain or did he come up the river? It's been debated for years.
Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't it be nice to have that answer, though?
Yeah.
Jim, what would you say to him if he was here today?
Well, first of all, I'd thank him for his service, very much so. And I'd ask him how he got started, how he first heard about the revolution beginning. Because it's interesting, because the way word spread back then, they didn't have the modern communication like we had today.
Right.
And I'd be very interested if he had any other relatives that served with him.
That's another question. There are several that would be great to know. And Greg, what would you say to Richard Bailey if he was here?
I, like Kevin, would like to know what brought him to this area. I mean, this at that time was frontier. It was pretty much dominated by Native Americans, and there was a lot of history in this area that goes back to that very time period, more so than almost any other portion of our history.
And Kevin, when we were out there, we were talking about like the grave and maintaining it. So is that part of the duties of the Sons of the American Revolution, like maintaining graves like Mr. Bailey's?
If they're necessary, if need be, yes. The family still takes care of the Bailey grave, Gene Bailey's family. So.
And you had mentioned some other maybe burial plots around?
At Oakville, there's a cemetery that has two, Peter Dingus and Isaac Cole, that are both Rev veterans. And then Josiah Meadows is buried in what used to be the town of Lilly, which now is in Summers County, but prior to 1837, well, 1872, it was still part of Mercer County.
Wow. Wow. And Jim, why do you think it's important to talk about these people, like to teach future generations and people about those who served in any war?
Well, the whole idea, if we don't understand our past, we don't know what to be proud of. And we also won't know what we should not do.
Right.
I said if we don't learn our past, we're doomed to repeat its mistakes. But I think it's more important that we look back upon the wonderful things that our ancestors did and created this country that we live in, because it's most unique.
Now I need to ask Greg and Kevin about their uniforms today. So Greg, tell us more about what you're wearing.
This particular uniform represents the 3rd Continental Light Dragoons, which was a cavalry unit that fought throughout the war, but they're more noted for fighting in the Southern campaign from South Carolina all up to Yorktown. They had a strong presence at the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, and also a strong presence at Cowpens in the Southern campaign, which was a pivotal point in the war. And plus, these men predominantly mustered out of Virginia, so that's why I decided to use this uniform.
Exactly. Now, what about this? Is this considered a helmet? Or?
Yes, this was a dragoon helmet. Each of the dragoon units had different styles. The 3rd Dragoon actually had a helmet similar to this, had the chain on it with horsehair, and it all has a purpose. It's not just the flair of cavalrymen, but this crest on the top will protect your head against saber wounds, and it's leather helmet.
Where does one get uniforms like what you and Kevin are wearing? Where do you all get these uniforms from?
There are vendors, sutlers out there that produce them, but ours were made locally. We had a lady,
Really?
Yes, my uniform was made by a lady over in Princeton, and my helmet was made by a fellow reenactor down in Roanoke, Virginia.
Wow. Wow, interesting. And Kevin, let's talk about your uniform as well.
All right, I would have been frontier militia, so I would have outfitted myself. So this is pretty much civilian clothing from the era.
Wow.
All wool and linen, heavy and hot.
Yeah, I can't even imagine
And leather,
how.
real leather, high maintenance. You got to hold them every time you wear them.
Are they uncomfortable to wear?
Oh no, these are great. But
Okay.
these would have been riding boots.
Oh, okay.
When you got off your horse, you would have put your buckled shoes on.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the history lessons. We have one more break to take, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to this edition of In Focus, everyone. This morning, we've been talking about Richard Bailey, a Revolutionary War soldier for the Virginia militia who's buried in Bluefield, Virginia. You saw a ceremony honoring him. But really, Veterans Day, it's approaching. It's a holiday honoring the end of World War I, which ended on November 11th, 1918. But this is also a holiday to honor all those who served, including those no longer with us. So, Greg, I'll start with you. Why is Veterans Day so important, and telling the stories of those who are no longer with us, who did serve?
As I said earlier, to me, one of the biggest things is the fact that freedom isn't free. And we're honoring soldiers who, many of them gave the ultimate sacrifice of their life so that we can enjoy the freedoms of this country today. And then every soldier that served has a job within the military. Everything has a purpose.
Yeah,
and
certainly.
so they all need to be honored.
Absolutely. And Dave, what about you? Let's talk about the importance of Veterans Day and honoring all of those who served.
Well, there's so many has fallen to save this country, to protect it. And those who do not know their past are destined to repeat it in the future.
Right, exactly. And then Kevin, what would you like to add about just the importance of Veterans Day and honoring those who served?
Our history and our heritage, and you know, the sacrifices that the American Revolutionary War soldiers made to give us the ability to debate and have our constitutional form of government that we have.
Yeah, and you all are so well versed in American history. We were talking a little bit on commercial break about some battles in the American Revolution. What are some resources, or do you all have suggestions for folks who are really interested in learning more about any part of American history, perhaps American Revolution or a different part of history? What are some resources available for them?
Records, books, videos.
You've got Google now. You can pretty much, you know, it's at your fingertips.
Do you all like meet regularly though for like maybe could the public ever get in touch with you?
Oh, yes. You can
Okay.
Sons of the American Revolution, we meet the third Monday of every month at 6:30 at Texas Steakhouse in Princeton.
Okay. Would that be open to the public to get in touch with you, or what's the best way if someone was truly interested in learning more, and especially about what you all do? What's the best way to get in touch? Do you all
Well,
have
they could call me personally, 304-466-6873.
All right. Well, there we go.
With the Mercer County Veterans Guard, you can call any funeral home in the area, or you can call me directly, 304-952-8152.
Fantastic. We have just a little bit of time left in this segment, but I'd like to get concluding thoughts from all of you just on something like the memorial that we were all a part of for Richard Bailey. Why is that important to continue to pay tribute all these centuries, decades later?
Richard Bailey was one of the first settlers in our area. And as we've talked before, this at the time was a Virginia frontier, and it was dominated by Native Americans. They came into this area, many of them fought, many of them were taken captives at times by the natives, but they were all instrumental in bringing what is considered now in a civilization westward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to know that history, as you all have been saying, because history can repeat itself, but you have to know your history too. And Dave, some concluding thoughts from you. What do you hope that the viewers take away from our show this morning? Maybe one or two takeaways from everything we've talked about today.
Well, we do a lot of funerals in the area, and we go to some strange grave sites. And there's a lot of graves that people don't even know are there, just like the Poor Farm.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill Archer and those guys, they've worked their tails off to try to locate these graves and get head markers up. Yeah. Well, Richard Bailey, they took up a lot of the head markers there. And we're still trying to figure out where they belong and so on and so forth. And these people need to be remembered.
Right.
They gave us our future.
Exactly. Right. And to have a tombstone there that folks can come and pay tribute to that person. And Kevin, let's get some concluding thoughts from you. What are some takeaways that you hope our audience learns this
Well,
morning?
if you're not interested in history, I would, urge you, especially genealogy. I'm a nut, I guess, but the more I know, the more I want to know. And I've got, one side back to the 1200s in England. Oh, yeah.
So how did you take like an ancestry test or something?
I've got a master's in history from Marshall.
Okay, so that helps.
That helps, but I just want to know. I was born old. I'm an old soul.
Right, so you were born with a desire to know more.
Yeah, I want to know it all.
And why do you all think it's important also, like we've talked about the American Revolution and at the local level too about Richard Bailey, but why do you think it's also important to know about local history, like Mercer County and surrounding areas? Greg?
I've found that there's a rich history in this. I mean, everyone is familiar with our coal history and the railroad history, but the history goes back way beyond that. And this colonial period, the Virginia frontier period, is extremely interesting. These were the same settlers. Many of them that lived here were right along with Daniel Boone going into Kentucky and helping to expand into those areas.
Yeah. And Dave, I see that talking about this has made you emotional. Can you share with us about what you're thinking? Your
No,
thoughts?
the angel lights are killing
Oh,
me.
okay. I was thinking that just talking about it, like, it's okay because like stuff like this, it's emotional, but it's important to talk about. But the lights are also extremely bright in here too.
Yeah.
We've learned to deal with it as anchors who are here every day. But when you're on set for the first time, it can be a bit jarring. Well, I guess, Kevin, anything else that you'd like to add? We have about 30
Well, we were
seconds
talking about
left.
Revolutionary War history in Mercer County and local.
Yeah.
Mercer County is named after our chapter is the General Hugh Mercer chapter of Sons of Revolution, West Virginia Society. And Mercer County is named after General Hugh Mercer, who was killed in 1777 at the Battle of Princeton, our county seat. And he was close with George Washington. They actually thought, the British thought he was Washington and bayoneted him to death.
Wow.
He died 3 days later, but
I wish we had a whole other hour to talk about all these stories, but it sounds like we'll have much more to talk about in a future segment. We've run out of time, but I want to thank everyone for coming in this morning. Thank you all, and Jim Worsham also for coming in today. Really appreciate all of you. And that does it for this edition of In Focus. If you have an idea for a segment, you can send me an email. It's mzosh, M-Z-O-S-H, @WVVA.com. Have a great day, everyone.